Welcome to MWI Men Sessions. On this podcast we'll be joined by a variety of different guests talking about various different topics to do with mental health.
Hello everybody and welcome to MWI Men Sessions, men's mental health podcast. The guest I've got today is Scott Munn. Scott's a member of the wee group that we've been running on a Friday night, and Scott's kindly agreed to come along and share a wee bit of his own experience. So Scott, thanks a lot, mate. How are you doing?
No worries, not bad, Danny. Thanks for having us on, mate.
Nah, good man, thanks. We'll just start off, Scott, talking a wee bit about the group. So Friday nights we're on the men's mental health group, and you've been coming along and actually offered quite a lot of support from the start. So just talk us through that. Why did you sort of get involved, and I guess the offer of support, but where's that coming from?
Sure, so it's something that's close to my own heart, given my own journey, things I've experienced in life, just growing up, probably had struggled with my mental health for a long time, like most guys probably have, I think, and just been more aware of that recently. So known Kieran for a long time, and when I saw the group getting formed, I thought, aye, that's definitely something I want to get in about. Came to the first meeting, as you know, like most people, I think, maybe you guys as well, wasn't really too sure what to expect, or how it was going to go, but then after like 5 minutes I just thought, aye, this is definitely, you're onto something here, in terms of the space that's been created, the environment and what it allows people to do. I was quite, probably like yourselves as well, in the group, the first meeting of the group, everybody was a bit, I think, probably a bit nervous to start with, and then as we went round and round and round, everybody relaxed, opened up, and I think they understood that it was a safe space. So seeing what it's done so far in the short time that it's been going, and the help that it's given the people that have been involved in it, I think that's the other reason why I'm keen to support it and give as much help as I can to try and get as many people involved as I can as well, because I think if there was something about like that for me years ago, I'd probably get a lot of benefit for it a lot sooner. Yep. And there's probably loads of boys out there, guys at all different ages, who would really benefit from coming along. And I think there's even people who have attended that maybe don't really understand where they're at. They don't know if they're struggling or not. Yep. And even coming to explore that and having the comfort zone or that space, that safe space to sit in and talk to people, or even just come and listen. As you know, I brought somebody along on Friday there. They never said a word, never spoke. And when we were chatting in the car on the way home, the benefit they got for even just being in that environment and listening to other people, it was unbelievable, and I think that's really helped that person. They've had a much better week since being at the meeting this week than they did last week. So that's the aim, and it really it's giving people that safe space. And we get quite a lot of messages coming through on Instagram for people who are saying, look, I'm interested in coming along, but I really don't want to speak. And it's important that you know that you're not under any pressure when you're there. If you feel like you want to open up and speak a wee bit, then you do that. But see if it's going to take you a few weeks to get to that place, that's fine. And see, to be honest, if you came and you never ever spoke, but you were getting something about the meeting, that's fine as well. I think there's a lot of sort of identification you get just in listening to other people's stories, because as you're talking there about going around the room and everybody sort of introducing themselves and saying a wee bit about what's going on for them, it's almost a bit like a bingo of everybody's sort of saying the same things as we go on. Some people have got some differences in there, but a lot of it's the same stuff. And I think you're right. Some people don't know they're struggling. So you mentioned Kieran there. Kieran does send his apologies for the night. He's away at the cinema with the wee man. Couldn't get out yet, so he sends his apologies. But and used to go way back, eh? Aye, definitely. So the experiences that I've had with Kieran years ago are different for the ones we're having a Friday night now. But the ones we're having a Friday night now are probably much healthier than any ones we've had before. For sure. As much as we had plenty of laughs and loads of good times. And it was funny for me seeing Kieran in that environment and having that vulnerability. And opening up, which I think is a massive factor in making everybody else comfortable. Yeah. Which is it's a big thing to do. Obviously, you did the same as well. You guys shared your experiences, and kind of set that that standard in terms of that you can talk if you want to talk, but at the same time, like you say, you've made it abundantly clear to everybody. If you want to come along and you don't want to speak, you're more than welcome to come and sit and have that experience as well.
I think that's important as well, because we talk about that a lot. Where in these environments, I've been in settings like that quite a lot. So for me, it was sort of like second nature. I didn't really feel. The only thing I felt nervous about was how many people was going to turn up to the meeting, because I didn't know either way. So I wasn't really that nervous about that environment. But I get for a lot of people that can be quite a sort of nervous thing turning up. But it's all about trust, and I think it's really important that people know whatever's said in that space sort of stays there, and we don't go and talk about it out with. And I can't really expect people to come to that meeting and trust in me if I'm not prepared to trust them. So see, just by sharing our experiences for the start, I think that's kind of the idea, is it sets the tone then that we'll share stuff with you. We're not going to ask you just to come in here and share stuff and no trust us. So trust's a two-way thing really, is the whole idea behind it.
Definitely, and I think that's something you see the amount of times. I mean, I think every week I've been there and at least one person has said, by the way, I've never told them this before. And then they're maybe sharing that in the room with, some weeks there can be 25, 30 sitting in that room. So that tells you enough about that environment, that people are comfortable enough to do that. And there is that trust. And I think you guys opening up at the very start, as I say, that like kind of cemented that for me anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like nobody really wants to speak. And it's funny as well, because everybody that speaks always says, I'm dead nervous about speaking. But then after a few minutes, I think once they start to open up and they realise, like, wait a minute, there's people in the room that resonates with. Mm-hmm. It's not just me, you know, I'm not alone. And I think that's a big thing with anybody's mental health journey. There's always times throughout it where people feel alone, and it's quite a dark place to be, and it can be a lonely place. So again, even if you are struggling, coming along, as I say, not speaking, but being in that environment and hearing that there's actually so many other people are in a very, if not the same boat, a very similar boat. Yep. And that's something that people take comfort from.
I think so.
If they don't speak,
I think that is the case, and I think as well, one of the because I've told my story that many times now that I'm sick in my own voice. Sometimes, I'll be honest, it's just like I'm fed up listening to it. But see, when I can take myself away from that and remember that actually the reason I'm sharing it now is for me, it's not what I get out of it anymore. It's who's it helped me in the process. And if you can take yourself out of yourself essentially and try and make it a wee bit about other people, then all of a sudden it starts to get a wee bit easier. I remember one of my sort of first experiences are really thinking about somebody else and not about me, because I've been selfish my whole life. And I was away in a cold water retreat with a couple of boys I know, Alan Syme for No Limits Coaching, and it was the first time I'd ever got into the cold water, and I was really, really nervous. Like, I really didn't want to go in the first place, and then when I was there I was really, really nervous. And as we're going down into the water, there was a kind of an older woman behind us who was trying to get in, but it was really rocky. So I was shaking myself to get in the water because I was terrified. But I turned around and sort of just gave her my horn so she could get in case she didn't fall. Aye. And as I'm dragging her sort of down behind me, the next thing I know, I'm in the water, she's in the water. I had forgot all about the fact that I was scared just because I was helping somebody else. Aye. And that stuck with me, because that was really early on in the sort of my journey of turning it all around. And it was like, the further and further I get away from me and thinking about me and start to think about other else, actually the easier it all gets, and I stopped thinking about me, and that was really helpful.
100%. And I think, again, like for me, even on Friday there, when I was sharing my experience and part of my journey, I felt dead nervous about doing that as well, and I wasn't thinking about helping them else at that point in my head. I'm just thinking like, man, I'm shaking myself here, you know. And then once you start to speak, and I could see people going, aye, like, I know what you mean. I get that as well sometimes, and it's like, wait a minute, and then the more you speak, the more it was resonating with other people. And I'm thinking, well, and then a couple of people after it came up, and listen, you don't do it for any reason other than it's the right thing to do, but doing that and then having people coming up to you and going, listen, see, even just hearing you speak tonight, I feel much better, much better. And that for me, like, it's just amazing. So I think about that, and then I think about the group as a whole, and think what everybody collectively is doing. You know, it's a big thing that's been created now, and it's got quite a bit of movement. You know, even like the WhatsApp, we talk about that every meeting, because I think every week the WhatsApp group helps somebody else out. Somebody writes in it, they're struggling or maybe not feeling great, or in a particularly bad space for a period of time. So many people say, like, so many boys have reached out. It's amazing to see. And just that's all people that have maybe only met each other over the past few weeks, but already there's that trust and that bond where we're not going to let anybody struggle. We're going to reach out, and I think that's what it's all about, encouraging people to open up and be honest about how they feel.
For sure, mate, for sure. I think that's the thing, because it's a Friday night group. It runs for 90 minutes. So see, and we've had this experience where people are saying to us sort of during the week, I can't wait for the meeting on Friday because my head's bursting. It's like, an hour and a half a week's not enough. If your head's bursting, don't sit between meetings and just try and make it to the next meeting. It's like there's a WhatsApp group there to be used for that reason. Whether it's you're having a great day or you're not having a great day or whatever it is, just post it, because it's like, I think there's a sort of conception that these meetings are all people sitting around with their heads down and we're all really sad. It's like, sometimes people are struggling, but there's other times when people come in and say, I've had a great week, and sometimes you need to hear that a wee bit of positive stuff as well, don't you?
Aye, 100%. It's sharing the wins as well and celebrating that. You know what I mean? And no matter how small or minute it might seem to somebody else, if that's your situation and it's a big thing for you, and it's a big thing for the group. And there's a lot of positivity as well. You know, there's a lot of everybody's journey, there's parts of their journey that's it's a negative, of course it is, because it's not an easy thing to go through if you are struggling with your mental health. But off the back of that, there's loads of positives, and that, you know, that forms part of it as well. It's exactly like you say. I spoke to a couple of people about it, and they were like, "So what is it?" Everybody's saying that they feel shite, and I'm like, well, sometimes there is people, because that's how they feel. There's a lot of times where people come in exactly as you say, Danny. It's like, I've had a good week. Do you know what? I'm feeling good, and it's like you can see even those conversations getting exchanged in the group, with people saying, "I've done this, I've went out and done my run, I've went a walk, or I get this done." And it's like everybody's like, well, do you know what? If that's something that's important to you, then good on you for getting that done.
Definitely. 100%. So you said there that one of the reasons you came is you've struggled a wee bit all the years. Take us back then to sort of do the whole chronology thing. What was life like for you growing up, and when did it all sort of start?
So I think, see, to be honest, when I probably wasn't aware of it when I was younger, but I've always struggled with my mental health, and I think back now, and I'm more aware of how to manage my feelings and where I'm at with things. I think there probably was times where I didn't know I was struggling, but I was. I had quite a significant event when I was younger, which I suppose I probably wasn't aware of it at the time, but it was quite traumatic, losing somebody quite close to me. But as I say, I was a young age, so vaguely, probably not even actually really remember it at the time. Just remember having sort of vague memories of after the event and different things. Life after that was fine for me growing up. Grew up with a nice family, good parents and all the rest of it. They both worked really hard, ran their own business, so I was quite fortunate in that sense. And when I was younger, just loads of happy memories. Everything was good. Got older, went through high school, and probably started to struggle a wee bit then, in terms of being, I suppose you could say I was a poster boy for having a good life. As I say, parents worked really hard, but they were quite fortunate. You know, we had a good life, nice house, we were able to go on nice holidays, do all the things you would want to do. It ticks all the boxes for the outside world looking in, thinking everything's rosy. And then off the back of that, probably had a lot of people round about me when I was, you know, leaving school, starting to work, loads of people that I thought were friends, quite a big circle. And it's the old thing, you know, through time you realise that actually there's not many people that close to you that are actually really true friends. So going through that whole experience, understanding that and realising that, I think that's probably when I first started to struggle. And I never really dealt with that properly. I don't think I was going out and partying all the time, working really hard. When I left school, had a job in the family business. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. Yep. Quite a stressful job, so I was going out and just partying all the time, and, you know, doing whatever everybody else was doing, because that was the thing that everybody did, just to fit in. If that's what everybody was doing, if they were going out to the dancing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then I was going out to the dancing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there's no denying, you know, people would love to come back to my house, because we'd have quite a big house, and I'd my own sort of flat at the side of the house where everybody could come and party and all the rest of it. So with that, you get loads of pals, but are they really pals? The true answer to that is, through time I realised no, they're not. And there's not that many people who I've got now that I would consider close pals. So that was quite a difficult time for me, and then again, just never really addressed it. There was one day or one weekend where we were away with who's now my wife, my girlfriend at the time. There was a crowd as we went away to log cabins, and I just remember, I'm trying to think what age I would have been, early 20s I think. No, in fact, 23, 24 maybe, and being away for the weekend, every day was having a brilliant time, and I just couldn't stop greeting. Just greeting all the time and feeling absolutely terrible, and then thinking to myself, feeling guilty about how bad I felt, because I was thinking to myself, I don't have any reason to feel this way, so why do I feel like this? And that, on top of it already feeling shite, was an absolutely horrific thing.
Of course.
Like, just being in a really, really dark place, and thinking, even though, like, I had quite a lot of people around about me, and at that point, like, there was no hiding that, because we were away at, like, lodges for the weekend, so people were like, what's up with him? Like, what's going on? And folk are like, he's just mad with it. He's been drinking for 2 days. Like, and I'm like, oh, no, actually, I feel really, really shitty.
Aye. And then what you do then is you invalidate your own feelings by asking the questions. It's like, I shouldn't feel like this, and therefore, you know, there must be another reason why I feel like this, or and you start searching for sort of answers. And one of the things you said that was really, really important, I think, is you spoke about the sort of the pals who weren't really pals in the end, and it's like the quality of your relationships, and you don't really realise this till you get a wee bit older, but the quality of the relationships, for me anyways, is really what defines my life today. See if all the relationships that I care about, see if they're all in good condition and I'm looking after those relationships, I tend to breeze through life, and it tends to be whatever happens to me in my life, I can sort of cope with it, I can manage it and I can deal with it. But see if relationships, and I'm not managing them particularly well, I'm not treating people the way I think I should be treating people, that's when life really starts to get on top of me. It's like the quality of the relationships are what's really important.
I couldn't agree more with that. And exactly like you said, it's maybe not something that you understand or process until you're a bit older, with a bit more life experience, because I would have been the person that would have been going to everything, just, as I say, just to fit in, whatever it was. And it wasn't like nobody was horrible to me or anything. Do you know what I mean? It was just that whole, in my head, I viewed the relationship with those people completely different as to what it actually was. And it wasn't until you're in a point of maybe crisis or where you need a bit of support, it's only then that you get an understanding of, well, actually, wait a minute, it's like, what are you greeting for? You know, it's that whole thing, and it's like, well, I don't want to sit here and greet, but sometimes it gets on top of you and it's too much. Do you know what I mean?
And that's a hard thing as well, because I've probably done that to people. Do you know, when somebody's been greeting in front of me, like, whether it's family or friends in the past, and you're asking the question, what are you greeting for? And it's not always at a place of sort of malice or being nasty. It's just you genuinely can't figure out why are you greeting. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the west of Scotland that we're in. You're not going to sit your mate down when he's greeting a lot of the time and say, what's going on for you, talk me through it. It's just like, stop greeting. And
I'm the same. I've been there with other people and not understanding what it was for me. So you don't understand what it is for anybody else. So I'm like that, what's up? Like, what do you mean? It's that whole, I don't know, ignorance not the right word, but it's just a lack of understanding, I think, until you're in a better place where you can look back. And it's only looking back that I understand what was kind of happening with me and where I was at in my head, you know, because at the time I had no idea.
And what was that, do you think? What do you think it was that was sort of, why was it that you had a sort of this idea of these relationships? Why were they false relationships, and when did you sort of come to that realisation?
I think probably, like, I always remember there was a night out I was on with everybody, and I was in it, I wasn't feeling great, I just wasn't feeling it, and it was like a whole thing, I need to get up the road, and it was a whole thing, well, away you go then, like, you know, there was no, and I wasn't looking for somebody to come and hold my hand, do you know what I mean, and take me up the road, but it's like that whole, the next day thinking, like, and it wasn't just, it didn't pass, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, it's because I've been out or I'm tired or whatever. The next day I woke up and I felt the same, and I felt the same the next day. That's been probably that was a moment for me where I was like, okay,
name messages after it to see how you are, all that stuff.
Exactly, and then that's like exactly what you said about the quality of the relationships. And there's only like a handful of people that have been consistently there for me through my life. One of them is my wife, obviously, where like we would be in the same circle, you know, so we would go out together. It was like her pals were my pals and my pals were her pals, so it was a big group. And there's a lot of those people that we are still pally with, and I'm still pals with, and I still speak to, and I still see, but it's like exactly what you said a minute ago about being content with only having that really small group of people, and if everything's all right there, then I'm fine with that as well. Like, it's so true. It's letting go of and understanding that it's all right not to really bother about that, because that's not good for me. Do you know what I mean? I just can't get caught up in that. It affects me in a bad way.
So you said your missus stood by there. One of the things I always find remarkable about these stories, and even my own story, and some of the people, my closest mates now, I tend to keep myself in circles of people who are similar to me. Not necessarily they've went to the depths of hell that I've went to, but you know, they're trying to live their life in a certain way, and maybe they've been through some stuff, and it just amazes me how the partners of these people have sort of been so supportive through all it, and there's been times when, even in my own story, but in people that I know, I'm going, why would they stay? Why would they not just cut loose? And it's a pure selflessness about that.
Totally.
What about your missus then? So did she notice you were struggling? And
I think she's always been like consistently there to support me. And like one of the things that happened, my son Blake, he'll be 3 this year, but when he was born, he was really unwell. And again, it's that whole thing of the selflessness for them, but then being selfish, and again maybe not realising at the time, but then looking back and going like, wow. So he was born and he ended up with meningitis and he was really unwell. So he spent like the first, I think it was like a week or maybe 10 days in ICU, and then he get moved to room, and then he was in hospital for weeks. He's fully recovered now and he's fit and healthy. But at the time, it was quite serious with him. You know, it was critical. There was a day where they were saying to us, like, we've done everything we can. It's over to him now, kind of thing. And there was no guarantees that he was going to pull through. He was really, really poorly, and I just crumbled. I could not deal with it at all. Like literally, I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. And I think, like, again, not realising at the time, but when I look back, like, my wife literally had to hold me up, and she'd already been through the whole carrying him for 9 months, giving birth. The birth was quite traumatic as well. They had to bring in the resource team when he was born, and then he was fine. So it was kind of that big, drama's not the right word, but big, you know, worry. And then everything was okay. And then it was like a day after that. In fact, it wasn't even a day after that, it was a few hours after that, he started to take not well, and then they discovered later on that day that he had meningitis. So when I think of that, like, I was absolutely useless. And like, to the point where I never even considered how she was or what she was dealing with, and she was like literally having to hold me up.
Hold you up.
So when I think back to that, like, it's an example of, there's no malice in it, you know, it wasn't an intentional thing. It's not like you're saying, don't need to worry about her, I'm worrying about me. But when I think in that moment, you know, she was going through the same thing I was going through. She might have processed it a bit better than me, but obviously it doesn't mean it's any easier for her.
Of course.
But as like and I've still probably not really dealt with that. That's probably still something I carry about with me. As I say, he's fit and healthy now, but even like if we're watching something on the telly and there's an unwell baby, like I'll walk away. I can't watch it. And whenever he gets not well, like, I am super para. Like, honestly, I'm like, get me to the hospital now, do you know what I mean?
Because we've got she's 16 months now, and anything that goes wrong with her, I just default. Like, I've done a lot of work in myself and all that all the years, but for whatever reason, it's when anything like that goes on in the house with the wee one, if she even falls and bumps her head, I lose it completely. I'm like, I'm panicking, and my missus is like, going to just chill out, relax. And I don't know if some of that comes from, I don't know, my missus got an instinct that I've not got with this stuff. There's stuff that I just can't figure out. I don't understand it, but she seems to have it all together. And I think there's definitely a difference in the sort of understanding and relationship between a dad and the child, and as there is for a mum. So they kind of just get it in a lot of cases. But I can't imagine how tough that must have been, because it's, as I said, like, even when the Wayne's got a cold or something, I'm panicking.
I think as well after that, I didn't really probably carry myself in the right way. I didn't deal with things. I probably should have dealt with that at the time and maybe try to process it a bit better. But again, you're just kind of caught up on the fact that, like, right, everything's better and he's all right, you know. So it probably affected me a lot more intensely then. As I say, it still does now, but I'm all right with it now, if you know what I mean. And I've moved past that. But as I say, I still get, like, you know, there's still things that's a trigger for me, I would say, where it can set me off. And as I say, like, he was not well a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, I just want to get him to the hospital and get him seen. Even just somebody tell me it's just a cold and he's going to be all right.
For sure.
But it was a terrible time. I think that was another, probably since between the time I was speaking about when we were away and I had that sort of that moment when I just kind of crashed with everything. Between that and then Blake, that was the two, like, that was probably the worst I'd been in that sense. But as I say, if it wasn't for my wife, then I don't know, you know, I had it all, I had them written off in my head, and I don't like saying that. I hate saying that, but I think I spoke about that on Friday, you know, the fact that in my head I was like something bad's going to happen here, and not, there wasn't a fibre in my being that wanted that to be the case, but my head would not let me get past that, and that's how I think I was so traumatised with the whole thing. It's that
worst case scenario thinking, isn't it? And it's like, sometimes you can, I don't know about you, sometimes I can control it. I can't control the first thought that comes into my mind, right? That's impossible. But sometimes I can intercept that with a second thought and I can sort of bring it back. But other times my mind just takes me a wander. And I don't get the choice. It's just like, this is happening. It doesn't matter what evidence I've got for it. It doesn't matter, you know, all the stuff I've learned all the years. It's like, just worst case scenario thinking's all over me. And sometimes it can be really, really difficult to try and get out of that, can it?
100%. And your mind's so powerful. And it's not always a good thing. You know, and I think, like, you underestimate the power of your own head and where that can take you. You know, I'm the same. Like, I'm down a rabbit hole. And then it's like, sometimes I need to pinch myself and be like, wait a minute, like everything's all right. What are you thinking like that for?
And sometimes that's where having good quality relationships come into it, because sometimes I'll phone whoever, Kieran or one of my other mates, and I'll say, look, this is what's going on, this is where my head's taking me, and it's worse. And they're just like, Gonny, just what are you talking about? You're off your head. And then just even somebody giving you that wee bit of, you've got no evidence for this is just stuff you've created in your own head, it's a scenario, it's a crisis, it's one of these crises that I have quite regularly in my own head that never ever happen. And just somebody pointing that out to me, somebody you can trust, who's not going to, there's no when I phone them going to tell me what I necessarily want to hear. They're just going to tell me what I need to hear sometimes, and it's quality relationships, you get that.
100%, and that's what you need somebody to tell you that. And I think that's how, within the group, it's that acceptance that sometimes it's okay for somebody to say that to you. You know, whereas like if you go to somebody who maybe doesn't understand that and you're like, by the way, I was thinking the other day and I was thinking about this happening, that happening, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What are you on about? You know, and it's that whole, I think that's a barrier for people to open up, because it's like, if you're worried about how somebody's going to perceive you, if you're already not in a good space, and then you're worrying about how you're going to come across to somebody when you're trying to open up or trying to speak, there's no way you're going to do it. And
that's a barrier. That's definitely the barrier in it. It's often what has been for me. I can't speak for anybody else, and when I speak on this podcast and what I say to the group, it's like I always need to reinforce that I don't speak with any authority in any of this stuff. I'm just a guy with experience. I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, and I don't know what's happened for everybody else, but in my experience, that's the barrier. It's fear-based. I don't want to tell Scott what's going on for me, because Scott's then going to think differently about me, and I need Scott to like me, because I need everybody to like me. And see, if you don't like me, then it's a problem with me. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I've lived my life. But you spoke there about the power of the mind, and I was listening to something this week, and the guy was sort of saying the thing that separates human beings for all other sort of creatures on the planet is that there's two faculties we've got in our brain that others don't. One of them is memory, and one of them is imagination. So powerful. You've got memory because, you know, memory is the thing that teaches me how to stay alive, essentially. Get all these memories that make sure that I'm safe and I'm alive. And then it's got other benefits to having a memory as well. And then the other one's imagination, where I've got these pictures that I can imagine stuff, and it's great. But for some reason, I use them the wrong way. I remember all the bad shit that's happened before, and I'm thinking about worst case scenario in the imagination all the time. So these two amazing faculties that are so powerful, I'm constantly using in the wrong way. And it's like there's people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you've ever heard of him, who teaches you can change that. You can change the wiring in your brain.
Totally.
It's a journey. It takes a bit of time and practice, but it's like it can happen. You can do it.
Aye, and I think, see, having the right mindset to allow you to understand that it's something that, you know, all right, it's not how it should be, but you can fix it, you can work on it, and it's not always like that. But I think there's so many people that need the help to get to that point, to even understand that it's something that you can look at and you can try and fix. And again, like that's, I mean, you touched on it there about the fact that you've explained your experience, but it's not necessarily something that's going to work for everybody. And again, there's that kind of comfort within the group that it's all right for somebody to sit and hear somebody speak and say, well, I've tried that and it doesn't work for me. But there's maybe 4 or 5 other guys sitting in the room that might be able to take whatever that technique is, or that practice, or, you know, even just a method of dealing with maybe your feelings that day. And it might not work for everybody in the room, but even just sharing the experience or sharing the knowledge, it could help somebody in a massive way.
Aye, for sure. So then you're sort of in your 20s, and that happens with your wee boy, with Blake. What happens for you after that then through life? So
I think I probably, I never did anything terrible or anything like that, but I just probably wasn't the person that I should have been for a while, in terms of maybe not, probably struggled to get a bond with Blake after that. And again, I don't like saying that, but just initially in that period, I think because of the sort of the trauma for everything that had happened, I felt like I didn't have the same sort of bond that I maybe had with my daughter, and that was something that I really struggled with as well. And then the people close to me noticed that, you know, the fact that I maybe wasn't, it's nothing to do with him, it was all on me. Do you know what I mean? Not all on me, but thankfully I got myself together, and, you know, I mean, he's an amazing wee boy. Everybody's way amazing, but to them, but you know what I mean. And I think I struggled for a while after that, but then things got a bit better. Then good spells and bad spells. I think it's, for me, and it's not everybody, but for me, I'm up and down with things. Do you know what I mean? I'll have good weeks, good months, a good year, and then every now and then something can crop up and it just, I can be in that not the best space again.
Yep.
The next significant thing for me after that was changing where I worked at the time, and then going on to start my own business last year. So I'm still involved with another bigger company that I work for, but also having my own business as well. So it was then like the pressures and the stress of all that. I know you've got experience in that world as well, regardless of the industry or whatever it is, but doing your own thing, until you do it, you don't truly understand how difficult it could be. And it's irrespective of what support you've got round about you, what financial backing you've got, it's just things happen, and it's the hardest thing ever.
And it's part of that, I don't know about your experience, but part of that for me is, and I'm just really starting to learn about it now, is that no, everybody cares about your business the way you care about it. So see, when you've got whatever it is, whatever help you've got, and even like customers to an extent and staff and all that, they don't feel the way you feel about it, and that's all right. They shouldn't, because they're not as invested in it as you are. But I put a lot of sort of stress and pressure on myself that people aren't behaving the way I want them to behave when it comes to this business. It's like, well, they don't. It's not theirs. Why would they?
Aye, it's not their job to do that, and I struggle with that as well. And then there was points that we got our premises, we got it all refurbished, and it was going on. It was taking months and months and months, and there was times where I was like genuinely thinking, this isn't happening. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And everything I had was put into that, and and I don't mean in like necessarily just in a financial sense or whatever, but it's like your time, your energy, and you cannot be, when you're doing that, you cannot be, I don't care what MD says, but you cannot be 110% focused at home on your home life, and that's, you have to make that sacrifice. And again, I was fortunate at the time that the people closest to me understood that, and I was able to do that, which is a big thing. But even still, I still struggle with that whole, like, trying to balance it, and I really get frustrated with myself when I don't come across the right way. I still beat myself up, and sometimes rightfully so, because I don't always do the right thing. The nature of what I do is, I'm a funeral director. It's funerals, so it's 24 hours. People need me all the time, and just because I have my own business it actually worsens or increases the need for that, because not only am I worried about the families that I'm looking after, but I'm worried about the whole thing overall. Yep. So I struggle with that for mental aspect about like managing my time and my priority, and I always want to prioritise family, of course I do, being at home, but it's so hard with what I do, and then when I don't, I feel like I don't get that right all the time, and I don't. That's not just me being hard on myself. I know I don't. Sometimes I do, and I don't think I do. But that's something I struggle with still to this day. I
couldn't agree more. I'm in that phase. I'm in a period of this at the moment. I don't know. It goes in waves for me. It's like sometimes I feel content about it all, and then other times I'm very, very aware that I should be doing more with the family. I should be doing more to help about in the house or whatever it might be. I just know I should be doing more. But that idea of balance, it's like this might be wrong, right? But where I'm sort of at with it now is there is no balance. It's like if you've got that many plates spinning, something's going to drop. So if I focus more of my attention on the family stuff, and I spend all my time doing that, then the business suffers, my work suffers as a result. And if I spend all my time away for the business and doing more of that, that's just how it works. There's no real balance to be found, because what happens to me then is I'm spreading myself so thinly across everything that I'm getting nothing right. And it's like, I don't know about you, but see the dad guilt that I get, it doesn't matter where I am. See, sitting here tonight, it's like I'm really happy that this was a later podcast, because I know the wee one's going to be in her bed. See if I'm sitting here at 6 o'clock, I'm sitting going, I don't know if I should be here, I should be in the house. And see, when I'm in the house, I'm going, I could have been more productive tonight, because all I'm doing is sitting on the couch, and it's like just this extreme guilt that I should be doing something else all the time. I've got the laptop open and I'm lying cuddling Lily, do you know what I mean, getting her to sleep, and then sometimes I'm like, I need to shut the laptop, because I'm not giving her everything. And then it's like sometimes she'll fall asleep and I'll open the laptop back up, and then I'm like, do you know what, I should just be lying having a moment with her there, just cuddling in there and enjoying that time, because I work every day, well, Monday to Friday anyway, so like I don't get a lot of time with them during the week, apart from when you come home it's dinner, bath, getting them ready for bed and all that. So I get that as well, but then at the same time it's like I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to build something for them,
and that needs time, it needs energy. It's never a quick thing as well, you know. But I think in any business, unless you're really fortunate, it's a longer term thing. You know, unless you're going to invent the next thing that's going to change the world or whatever.
Get on board with crypto before it starts, that type of thing.
Exactly, it's a slow burner. But then that's like, I get frustrated with that, but then I also get frustrated because I feel I'm sacrificing all this in this time to be at home with the family, but then at the same time, at the moment, you're not seeing a return for that, because it's a long term thing. Do you know what I mean? The kids will reap the rewards of what I'm doing now, and I'm alright with that, but it's like, it's still at times a challenge in my head, because it's that constant battle. Have I done the right thing? Should I work late the night, even though I really need to, or should I go home? It was like last Friday, I said to Lily, when in the morning when I took her to school, I said I'm going to try my hardest. She goes to swimming lessons on Friday. I come to swimming lessons, but I don't know if I can. And then as soon as I said that, I was like, why did I say that? And I couldn't make it because I get held up. So she's fine about it, because you know, her mum goes along with her and everything. That's fine. But I was like, all afternoon I felt terrible. And even when I went home, I ate away at me on the Friday night for a good few hours, because I was like, why did I say that? But she's not the least bit bothered. It's in my head. That's the important part. It's in your head. And I don't know about you, but see all the pressure that we're talking about, all this sort of internal dialogue that's going on in our heads, nobody else puts any pressure on me. No, it's always me. So a couple of times that my partners had to say to me, look, get it together, like, I need a bit more help here, and she'd every time been quite right to do it. But the majority of the time, it's just me running away in here. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. I'm not doing enough at work, I'm not doing enough at home. Nobody else is saying anything. No, it's like it's me. I'm putting words on my head in somebody else's voice. So whether that's Leanne or you know, somebody at work, and I'm thinking to myself, I know exactly what they're saying in their head about me, and it's like, I'll run away with that. And I'm like, then it's a moment of, what are you talking about? They're absolutely fine. They're actually alright with it. Sometimes I think that's worse, because I'm expecting like a different reaction. You've
prepared for it. It's like, you actually believe you deserve it. So I have myself convinced I deserve an absolute bollock in here, because I've not been doing enough. And it doesn't come, and you're like questioning everything. Have I been doing it right? So it's like, I really, really struggle with that. I'm laughing about it now, and it's like, it's good to talk about it, and you know, it's good to laugh about it, but it's probably at the moment it's the biggest source of pain in my life, is try to figure all of that out.
Same. I just feel like I don't have enough hours in the day, and then it's always been like, I've always been on call with work and stuff like that. It's never been, I mean, it's not a night, office hours are 9 to 5, but it's not a 9 to 5 job. It just isn't. Christmas Day, you know, whenever it is, holidays, it doesn't matter. So I feel now though that at the moment I'm in a good place with it, and things are starting to, like, the business is building up and it's going well, and it's good, and it's back to what we were saying about, it's good to speak about the positive side of all that as well. But as I say, I still, like, in my head, it's not an external thing, it's not a real thing, but to me in my head it is real. So it bothers me every day, and it, like, you now and then she'll be saying to us like, no, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be here doing this, and I'm like, at times, you know what, you're absolutely right. And I struggle with that, the frustration of realising, you know, myself, it's like coming to terms with, actually, I've done the wrong thing here. And it's never a deliberate thing, there's no malice in it, but it's like, my head sometimes doesn't,
just goes away with it. And I don't know about you, but even though I don't see, if I've ever, I need to be told, you need to be doing more here, my first thought's never, you're right. Even though deep down inside I know myself that I need to be doing more to help, but my first reaction is, I'm offended by that. Me, I do everything for everybody. It's like, totally, you're just a selfish big bastard. Just go and do what I've asked you to do and get it done. It's like, right, okay.
It's not a nice thing to say, but I think that's part of, for me, and again, I'm not saying this is the case for everybody, but for me, sometimes it's like that acceptance, or like, you've not always done the right thing. You can be selfish at times. But again, it's then the thing that eats away at me is the frustration about, like, I've made an arse at you. It's difficult, and then it's hard to shake that for me. It's something I carry, and it sticks with me for quite a while. And it can drag me down. Like, that can give me a really one wee thing that could happen on a Monday, like, puts me in a shit mood for the rest of the week.
For sure.
And it's horrible when you've got that, like, hanging over you, and then I start to process it and go, it's actually not that big a deal. But then sometimes that gets me more frustrated, because I'm like, if it's not a big deal, why is it ruining my week?
Ruined your week, I know.
And it's like a vicious cycle sometimes.
And it's like, I don't really like to use the term overthinking, because it's like you're you're just thinking. It's not really over. But I'm a really deep thinker as well, so I know exactly where you're coming from. It's like I analyse everything to I need conclusions out of everything, so I need to analyse everything to the nth degree to figure out exactly what it is that's going on and why is it happening. And sometimes I just need to remember that it's just the way you feel, and it's all right. But I was fascinated by the line of business that you're in. I was fascinated listening to another podcast that you're on, and in your story and some of there's just so much going on in there that I had never even once considered. So when I think about a funeral director, right, I'm thinking about The Undertaker for the wrestling, right, the big hat and the big thingy. And I'm not thinking about, because there was an emergency services guy at one of the meetings, and you're talking to him about some of your experiences, and it's exactly the same. And I hadn't even realised that there's a first responder element to the work that you do. So talk us through it. What do you do? When did you get into it?
So family business. So grew up at the funeral home. So I literally used to walk out, going to school in the morning, and I would walk by a hearse and a coffin every single morning. I was always, folk always say to me, like, were you forced into it? I was never forced into it, but there was never anything else that I wanted to do. It was always just normal. That's what I would do. I would go and work with my dad, and that would be it. So the first summer, I think it was in 5th year at school, I never really bothered at school. I never applied myself. I'm not the most academic person, but I really did not make the slightest bit of effort at school, especially in later years. So I went and worked with my dad for the summer, and I basically took in my laptop, sat and played games, didn't do a thing. My dad never said anything to me, paid me. I done bits and bobs, but I made no effort. Went back to school for 6 years, wasted the whole year. Then after school I was like, right, can I get a job? He's like to me, no. I was like, sorry, what do you mean? He's like, why would I employ you? He's like, what did you do for me last summer? And I was kind of like, And then I remember going over and saying to my mum and being like, listen, you need to go and speak to him because he said
it's my dad.
And she's like, listen, I can't believe him.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't employ you either. So it was that whole thing of being taught that lesson, like, go and get a work ethic.
Yeah.
And the penny dropped, because I think in my head I'd always just thought, right, family business, my dad owns a company, I'll just walk right into a job and that's what I'll do for the rest of my life. Everything will be rosy. And then the reality of that being swept away from underneath me. And again, rightfully so. I was like that, oh fuck. Do you know what I mean? So then I ended up, I was very lucky. There was a guy literally outside valeting motors. Right. I went and spoke to him and I said, listen, you looking for MD? And he's like, aye, can you start tomorrow? Brilliant. So I went and did that, and then I went and got a job working with British Gas in a call centre at night, doing that, and I did that for a few months. Then my dad was like, right, and I mean I was working all the hours that God sends, but when you're like 16, 17, you know, you've got the energy.
It was easy.
I was doing that and going out all weekend, every weekend, do you know what I mean, and being totally fine. So,
but that's just what you wanted to see for you then, wasn't it? It was just a real lesson that is, look, there's a job here for you. But
the best lesson I was ever taught. Best lesson I was ever taught, because then when he came and said to me, right, in you come, I had a much bigger respect for, like, even the business in general, and the fact that it's not a God-given right just because his position in the company and all that stuff. So, and I started for the bottom. So I was making the coffins, used to furnish the coffins, washing the cars, and then as I progressed I get more involved with the actual behind the scenes stuff, caring for people. And I remember at the time being embarrassed to tell anybody what I did. And it was that whole thing, because at school everybody's like, oh, your dad touches dead bodies and all that. That whole stuff, do you know what I mean? That's what it was like. And then I used to be embarrassed about it. And even when I started working, I was still a bit like, but, you know, I wouldn't vocalise it at all unless somebody was like, oh, what is it you doing? I'd be like, hey, I work in an office.
Yeah.
So
it's just fear of judgment, really, isn't it?
Totally. And then as things progressed and my career progressed, I started looking after families, funerals, doing everything. So essentially anything for, like, you know, we would go to the hospital or go to houses, pick people up, bring them into care. We would organise the funerals, go out and conduct the funerals, drive on the funerals, essentially do everything. We sold the business in 2011, and the company that bought us over, it was known as the police contract. So it was essentially a contract to go and recover remains for any police incidents or anything like that. So that was probably when things changed in terms of my career, and probably in terms of the pressure as well. And probably not really realising the effect that's. I used to never want to hide behind that, you know, because it's a job, and there's loads of people, like there's loads of guys like me that go out and do what I've done. They've done a lot more than me, and been totally fine. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't affect everybody, but it does affect some people. And I don't think I was ever aware when I was younger of it having an effect on me. But again, now that I'm older and I look back at some of the things I've done in my job and in my career and some of the events I've been involved in terms of assisting the recovery of remains, I think it was quite a difficult
thing. Had an effect. Well, it's really interesting you say that, because it's a line of work that I've obviously never thought about in any great detail. But you're saying there most people are alright with it. I wonder how many people are really, really okay with it, and how many people it really affects, because you're dealing with, I know with time you get used to it, and but it must be really, really difficult. You must be dealing with some situations that other people just never get exposed to.
No, totally. Like there's times where we've been involved. I've personally been involved with looking after people from major incidents across Glasgow that would be known incidents that everybody would know about. Getting into houses where somebody's maybe taking their own life. You know, you could be dealing with children. I looked after somebody that was really close to me in their family, and they lost somebody. Like, you know, it's never the time for, I think, a child to go, but they lost somebody who they should never have lost, basically, and that's something that I still struggle with that as well. You know, that was a really, really difficult thing to do. I was glad I was able to help people in all those situations, but at the same time, when I think back, it was really difficult.
And is there a bit of because of the industry you're in? You said something there, and I go back to it. There's loads of other guys that do it, and have done more than you in that industry, and they're fine. Is it a wee bit of a we don't really talk about it? I think the grief.
I think there is, and that probably came to light after there was a major incident where we had assisted with recovering remains and caring for people, and we got offered from the company I worked for at the time. We got offered counselling, and I always remember thinking to myself, like, why? Why are we getting offered counselling now? Because some of the things that we'd experienced and dealt with, me and my colleagues had done, were more traumatic than anything like that, you know, because you don't know. I used to probably overanalyse things, and I would get into houses and think, what's happened here? And we would know, because like we would be acting on behalf of the police, so they would say, here's the situation, this is, you know, this person's passed away because of this. It could be somebody that's been murdered, it could be somebody that's taken their own life. Our job isn't to think about all that. Our job is to, you know, in the most dignified way as possible, bring that person from that place to the next place they need to go. But I would stand and be like, what's happened here?
Yeah.
And why? Like, and not from a point of view of, I wonder what's happened. From a point of view of how did this happen?
Yep.
How did this person get here? You know, it was like the same. I used to always think we would maybe go to houses where somebody had been discovered and they could have been dead for some time. You know, like months, sometimes maybe longer than a year. And I used to sit and think about it for hours, thinking, how can nobody know that person's not there anymore?
Yep.
Like, surely, even if they don't have any family, they don't have any friends, they must have went to the same shop every week, every 2 weeks. Like, somebody must notice. And I probably used to, again, thinking about it now, probably struggled with that quite a lot. I don't know why, but in my head, I hung on to all that stuff.
Well, I think it's a really human response. When I think about what you're saying there, it's like, to go into something like that and be totally immune to it must require some level of sort of either just total acceptance or I feel it sounds very humane to me that's how you're feeling. It's a human response to what's going on. I
suppose it is, and I take the positives for it now having my own business doing the same thing. If I can look after somebody, and it's unfortunate, since I've started the business I've had to look after loads of families that I know, and I might not know the person that's passed away directly, but I know the family. But taking the positives for that, it's like, for me, it's comforting to know that they want me to do everything for them, and they trust me to do everything for them. And at the end of that process, if I'm able to help them and get them through that part of the journey, that's something that it does, like, sounds like cheesy saying it, but genuinely it does. It means the world to me, because it's a big thing, and now I understand the importance of what I do. Whereas when I was younger, I don't think I did. Yeah. And I think that's the key thing, the fact that I do. When I do that for somebody, it's like, I know it's a big deal. Yeah. But at the same time, it's obviously, it is a job. We're professional, we're dignified, we need to be. You know, that's the ethos of everything that we do. But there's also, like, people, I've listened to people that do what I do, and they're like, I don't ever get affected, doesn't bother me. And I'm like, I don't think, it's like, I suppose it's like what you said, it's a human response. Yeah. Or a human response in terms of being able to level with people and have a bit of understanding. You know, and there's situations where I can't hear and I think, if I could burst into tears here. And I don't ever, do you know what I mean? Because there's that boundary where I'm professional, but at the same time, like, you get an understanding of somebody, and we might not know the person that's passed away, but see, by the time after me spending 2 weeks with the family, looking after them and helping them do everything, you feel by the end of it, like, you do kind of know the person. You know enough about them to know, you know, maybe what their football team is, what their favourite colour is. You pick up all these things, so you get an understanding. And it's a kind of picture that's painted to you by the family when you're looking after them. So sometimes it's hard not to get caught up on that, especially if it's tragic circumstances. And it's very rarely not sad circumstances when somebody passes away, but there's a difference between parents losing their child and a man that's 99 and had a full brilliant life and passed away peacefully at home.
And I guess, and there'll be much more to it in this because I know nothing about the industry, right? But if I'm thinking about what I'd be looking for when I'm in that scenario, when I just want to be able to go and grieve, and I want the rest of it to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot involved in that that probably nobody else can see. And there's and the other thing I was thinking, you know, the guys that you've spoke to say this doesn't affect me at all. I wonder if that again is just back to a stigma of within the industry. It's like people maybe don't want to hear that the funeral director's emotional and all that. It's like, but human beings.
There's a boundary where you remain professional, but I know for a fact, like, I work with people still today that will say, like, that they're totally unaffected, and I'm like that. I know for a fact there, because every single person that works there is, and it's like people say, some people are quite kind of not cold about it, but they just get that opinion that I'm not connected to that person, so it doesn't affect me. And there's certain people who only do certain elements of the job, but if you're looking after a family from start to finish, then I think it's natural.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned, maybe not on this one, but in fact you did, sometimes you're dealing with people who've taken their own lives. So I guess one of the reasons behind starting the group was really, we all know that the suicide, I don't want to say statistics, because that sounds really grim, but that's essentially what it is.
Aye.
The numbers really aren't good in the west of Scotland. So do you see that as a funeral? Do you feel it?
Aye. We do, and it's actually one of the things, and it might have changed now, so don't quote me on it, but last year I was looking at different things, and there was a certain proportion of people who had taken their own life, but it wasn't statistically recorded. Quite a large proportion, and it wasn't statistically recorded, as a suicide. And you think the numbers are really bad, as you say, they're worryingly bad, and that's not probably an accurate picture. But it's something we see. Like, we've had a few phases of quite a significant amount of people in our care at one time who have taken their own life, different ages. It's not always what you might think. And I think again that's something we would attend those circumstances to bring somebody into care. And I used to think, like, again, what's happened? How did that person get to that point?
Yep.
You know, how is it? And you could go out, begin into a nice big house somewhere and a nice car in the driveway. It's back to maybe relating a wee bit to my story in terms of all that stuff is irrelevant if you're not in a good space, because it doesn't mean a thing. It does not mean a thing.
It's the external no matching the internal again, isn't it?
Definitely. And I used to look at scenarios and just think, like, is that, did they really want to do this? Is that how this has happened? Or, did they change their mind? Is that why there's a mark there? Is it, all this stuff? It's grim, the amount of people that feel that, it's the old thing, isn't it? What do they say? It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And I think even through the group, we've seen plenty of people who, a lot of people have spoke quite openly about their experiences going down that route, but thankfully they've been able to speak up and get help, or maybe there's been an intervention from wherever or whoever to stop it happening. But it's still, there's so many people that don't get to that point.
And it's interesting because if I think back maybe 15 years ago, most people that I'd spoke to had, majority of them would never have even really came across suicide. One or two would have known somebody who'd taken their own life, but in large part, most of the people I speak to now have been affected by it in some way. They're connected to it, and somehow, and that's a really sobering thought. That we're all in some way connected to. We all know somebody who's either taken their own life or we're connected in some way. But groups like ours exist to try and sort of break the stigma, but it's like that's really only one part of it, and I'm really clear about that when speaking to people, because I've spoken about it before. I've been suicidal, and for a large part of my sort of 20s into late 20s, and speaking about it's the first step, and it feels like a weight's off your chest. But see, just speaking about it alone, in some respects, it's not going to be enough.
No.
So I think what we're doing as part of the group is just giving people that place where they can sort of open up and get that first step. But if you're really, really struggling and you've got really dark suicidal thoughts, might need some professional help as well. It's like the group can only do its bit.
Definitely, but I think even having that space to maybe continue that discovery about is that really how you feel, and then maybe if it is, you're right, there has to be that external intervention, maybe from somewhere where you can get professional help and assistance. But then I think as well, a lot of people, it's difficult to get that. I think the system, the NHS is under a lot of pressure in any aspect, physical health and mental health. It's difficult, so having the group as a sort of stepping stone is maybe not the right word, but there's people I think who come in through their shared experience can maybe get clarity on how to manage those feelings, and if that is getting external help, then I think you're right, there'll be cases and there'll be times when that absolutely has to happen.
Need to be passed on.
Aye, definitely. Sure. But there's also a lot of times where I think even just coming and sharing that experience, that could be the difference between the next person
for sure
going through with something and not going through with it. And I think as well, it's interesting because not everybody comes. I mean, there's some people who have came in, I would say, not necessarily in crisis, but they can identify that they've been in quite a difficult space or maybe quite a dark space. But there's also people who come and are just not sure. They maybe know something's not quite right, or they're just not feeling quite right. And it's not to say that they're going to be labelled with having something wrong with their mental health or an issue, but I think even just coming and chatting or listening, I keep saying it, but like speaking to my mate who I brought on Friday, hearing him speak about how much he got from that meeting. He never opened his mouth. His ears were open, but he never opened his mouth, not one bit. He didn't feel comfortable before we went up in the car. He was really nervous, and he's like, I don't know. He was supposed to come the week before, and he bottled it. And I was like, that's all right, because you need to come when you're ready to come. You can't. But it's difficult. And then speaking to him on the way home, I was just like amazed by how much he got from it. Because he never spoke, he never shared anything, but just listening and being in that environment. And I think as well, like there's no denying hearing people with similar stories or being at a similar point, whether that is in a dark space or being in a really positive space, or in between, or maybe just when you're not sure. That knowing you're not alone, and that knowing you're not going to be judged, it's amazing. And I honestly think there's so many people I know of. I mean, I've looked after loads of people that I know, unfortunately, that took their own lives through my career. I've been doing this for nearly 18 years now. And I think maybe something like this could have been the difference between, some people being here and them not.
Because I think one of the things you learn, if you've been in that headspace before where taking your own life's an option, I can only look back in my experience now and reflect and say it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to die or I wanted to take my own life. It was more I just couldn't keep living the way I was living. And the only other thing I could think about was that.
Totally.
So I often wonder that as well, because I've got a couple of really close friends that have taken their own life, and I often wonder, like you said there, and deep in thought, and I'm thinking, well, was it that they just couldn't keep living the way they were living and there was another solution for them, or was it genuinely that they were just like, no, my time's up? And it's like, what could we have done?
Totally. And I don't think it's a hard thing to accept, because it's a question you'll never know the answer to. But there's no doubt there is people who I think are genuinely in that much pain. I've seen it before, like with people who I've spoke to in different things, and it's like people think there's a whole thing of folks saying it's an easy option for people. I don't think it is. That's absolutely not the case. But there's people who are at a place where they've had enough, and things have been that difficult for them that they do feel that is the only option. And that's like, being able to speak to somebody and get them help. But it's back to the whole thing, it's guys aren't good at talking, they're not good at sharing. And another thing about the group, just to touch on that as well, that I was amazed by is see the range in ages that come. Like, you know, initially the first meeting, it was mostly younger guys, but as time's went on, we've had people in their 60s come to the group, and all different ages, and I think that's really encouraging to see as well, because again, you know, if you've got something with your mental health, it doesn't discriminate against age.
Yeah,
there's no boundaries there in terms of age. So seeing loads of different people come, I think it highlights as well for some people it's a journey they go through their whole life.
Yeah,
it's not maybe something that for some people it might be, and they get help when they get fixed, and that's fine if that's the way they want to look at it. But for other people, it's something that consistently has to be managed through life.
And that's really interesting, because I always remember I had an age on when I would start to get it all together, and it was like when I got to that age, it was like, right, that's interesting. All right, it's, you know, by the time I'm 27, I'll have stopped doing this, and this.
Aye.
And that time I get to 30, it's like you're still doing the same stuff.
Aye.
One of the other sort of interesting things about it is I think, you know, we still have this stigma that we talk about. This stigma, I think, based on my experience of, and maybe it's just because of the circles I'm in now, and it's like I'm living a different life, that actually we're doing a much better job of guys feeling like it's okay to talk. So I think guys are definitely getting better at that, and it's not so much breaking the stigma about just talking now. I think there's something that comes with this, which is we need to be better at listening, and we need to know how to respond to somebody when they're talking to us, because I've had quite a lot of times in my life when somebody's when I've reached out to somebody or whatever, and they feel like it's their duty to try and solve all my problems.
Aye.
And actually sometimes when somebody reaches out to you and says, look, my head's busting now and I'm really, really struggling, my job isn't really to say anything other than, how can I help you? And if that just means listening, it's like you feel it yourself, whatever it is that you're keeping in holds this power over you.
Aye.
And the minute that you get it out to somebody, it's like, I feel a bit freer. So they didn't need my wisdom, do you know what I mean? I'm going to come in with a one-liner to this really, really complex set of problems. I'm going to drop a bit of wisdom and they're going to be fine. It's like, doesn't work like that.
Sometimes I think you need the hard truth as well. You need to know that, like, it's not always going to be a quick fix. It very rarely is. And I think sometimes it's back to put that stigma, people like somebody coming and putting their arm around you and saying, listen, everything's going to be alright. It's no, you'll get there eventually, but there's a lot of work that has to be done.
Yeah.
And it's back to something I spoke about on Friday about setting your own bar. That's where I think, you know, whatever that is, if it's a small win, celebrate it and take it one day at a time, one step at a time. It's so important. Whereas, like, there's too many people think, like you say, you know, they mean well, but coming and putting their arm around somebody and saying, don't worry, everything will be fine. If you don't go out this weekend and you don't drink and you don't take whatever you're going to take, seeing Monday, you'll be a new man.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way either. I've seen so many guys that struggle, and a lot of people do struggle with drink and drugs. There's no denying that. I think that's, like, you know, that's a bit of a crisis across, certainly across the west of Scotland at the moment. But there's also so many people I've seen who are in that space, and they stop doing all that stuff and they're still no right in their head, and then they struggle massively to accept that because they've put everything down to the, you know, the choices they're making at the weekend in terms of alcohol or drugs, one or the other, or sometimes both. But in actual fact, that's not the root of the problem, or the root of the pain. It's coming from somewhere else. Well,
of course, and it's like you need to untangle what's going on in the brain. So we're just coming up to the end then of the podcast. I've really, really enjoyed it. Your story's great, and I'll thank you for your offers of support as well. From the minute that we sort of started the group, you've been one of the first people to reach out and say, like, how can I support in any way? And so we'll thank you for that. But just before we wrap up, so it's the sort of best bit of advice based on your own experience that you could give to somebody who's maybe listening to this podcast now and they're saying, look, I feel the way they felt, and you know, I need a bit of advice. What kind of action would you recommend?
I think it's easy to say, but try not to catastrophise everything. Break it down and take it one day at a time. Because I used to sit and think, I'm fucked, I need to fix everything. It's never going to happen. Not overnight. I'm still working on myself every day to be a better person and try and do things differently and try and make the right choices. And I still don't always get it right. So I think accepting that it's a longer term thing, but that's okay. Yep. And I think the most important thing is speaking to somebody. Speak to people if you can, and talk to them about how you feel. And that might not be in the format of the group like we have, because that's not something for everybody, you know. But I think finding somebody to talk to, having conversations and airing how you feel, even if it's one person that you can trust, I think that's a massive thing. Aye.
Solid advice. Listen, thanks a lot again, mate. Thanks for being
on, mate.
a member of the group and then for all the help and support. Appreciate it, mate.
No, listen, and can I just say thanks to you and Kieran for starting the thing and getting everybody together, because it's honestly a powerful thing, and I couldn't stress enough, if there is anybody listening or watching that's struggling, like the whole thing about no pressure to speak, come along, hear what it's all about, you know, come and spend an hour and a half, because it could be life changing. I know for some of the boys in the group it already has been. So if you're struggling, then you need to reach out and come along.
Thanks a lot, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.